Next up, we have Pete Roth from CDL Wisconsin and Roth Sugarbush, and he's got talk a little bit about their business, but he's also going to add on the end. He's going to talk a little bit about the syrup situation, I guess, and where the not situation isn't the right word, but just kind of where the market sits and how things are going, and some other related topics with equipment supplies and so forth. So if you've got questions, I'm going to give the mic to Pete for the next 20 minutes. So ask away at the questions and we'll hit him with them.
Good to go. All right. For those that don't know me, I'm Pete Roth from the Roth Sugarbush over in Cadott. We run CDL Wisconsin. We're going to have our normal open house here on February 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. We're going to do it a little different this year. Instead of live seminars, we're going to pre-record them, and they'll be on TV screens in the showroom, and you can watch, and they'll also be on our website and YouTube channels. It won't be the standard open house that we normally have with, a couple thousand people there. We'll still have the sales. We'll run them earlier and after the show also, so you got more time to come in on that. You're welcome to come during the open house. And that we're just we got to do a little bit of the social distancing thing there this year. The meal's not the same as usual. It'll be a little more low-key meal on site. There'll be sandwiches and some individual stuff that you can pick up, refreshments and that. You don't have to worry about me cooking this year, so that'll be good. There's a lot of new hobby stuff this year coming out by CDL. I don't have the fancy videos that the other guys got. I'll work up to that. This is, I'm not as technically savvy as a lot of the guys. New hobby stuff coming out. They've got nano ROs now for the hobbyists, guys with 30, 50, 70 trees. You'll see some videos on our site next week about them. They're in the $500 and $700 price range. And for a hobbyist, it'll take sap from 2% up to 5 or 6, depending on the machine. They're inexpensive. They're not real fast, but for a smaller operation, it would feed a small evaporator or a flat pan type rig. So that's kind of exciting. They're coming out with smaller vacuum pumps and releasers for the hobbyist to try to, make it affordable to run a tubing system under vacuum instead of just gravity. So that's some new stuff coming out. They got some new small evaporators, the Evapo Grill, the Hobby Pro, the classics. There's a lot of new stuff for the hobbyists there. So we're excited about that. There's a lot of new stuff for the big guys too. There's a heated sap lifter now inside of a little insulated box. I call it a doghouse looking thing, but it's can be run by solar. It has a pump in it. It's not the standard old sap lifter that you've seen for the last 25 years. So that's something new for guys with slope issues on that end of it there. So there's a lot of new stuff you're going to be able to look at on site. So, we're hoping to see everybody there for our open house. I'm going to talk a little bit here. They asked me to fill some time slots, so I'm going to talk. But if you guys want to send in questions, it'd be perfect to help just make it a little more interactive here. Maple syrup market. Syrup sales have been really, really brisk this year. The guys packing syrup have had real good success in the grocery chains, farmers markets, all the retail markets have done really, really well this year. Industrial markets where they go into like institutional foods or restaurants, that's pretty much non-existent. So it's converted over to people buying it out of the store, farmers markets, that type of stuff, and using it at home use. I hope that continues. That's good for the maple industry. Maple syrup is pretty much non-existent in the field. There's a few more buyers in the Midwest this year, and all the syrup has been pretty much picked up. price hasn't moved too much. A little bit of competition and buy-in now has affected it, but for the most part, it's been a stable price. Federation, I talked to them here last week, and they're between 9 and 10 million pounds more SERP sold this season than they have in any other year. So their reserves are getting down to, their target goals of where they want to hold it. Their issue is there's too much off-flavored SERP being produced. And we have that issue in Wisconsin also. Guys go too long into the season. When you start making off-flavored, buddy, stringy type SERP, you need to quit. The value of that keeps dropping off because there's so much of it. They got like 25 million pounds of it in the Federation. They call it a no grade or a VR SERP, and they're selling that for $1 a pound now. You got a little trucking on it, but you can buy all of it you want for $1 a pound. So that type of SERP, when you get to where it's not fit to be sold as table grade SERP, it's something you'd want to use on your pancakes or whatever you use it for, quit making SERP because you're going to go backwards in money. You can't make SERP for $1 a pound and make any money. It's hard enough to make SERP for $2 a pound and make money. If it was up to us as a buyer, I'd like to see everybody get $3-4 a pound because you'd be at my door buying more equipment. So it's there's a happy medium there. Quebec did raise their price to the producer a little bit, which will help the U.S. Exchange rate affects that more than anything. Everybody says, well, what do they have to do with our pricing? Well, if you package for any size store or chain, you're competing against another packer that's trying to get that same market. And it comes down to pricing of SERP and service, who's going to get that market. So when you go to a grocery chain to sell SERP, you're competing against a guy that may be from Canada, maybe from New England somewhere. So you have to look at what they're buying SERP at and selling it. So that kind of determines the price, so everybody's competitive in the marketplace. If you're just making SERP and going to your local farmer's market, that doesn't affect you as much. But if you're going to move any amount of SERP, the large trailer loads of SERP on a consistent basis, you have to be competitive in the marketplace. Otherwise, the guys will just buy it out of Canada. So, and when you buy out of the Federation, they can dictate what grades they get. So if they need a medium amber, or they call it amber rich now, I'm kind of old school on the grades yet, they can dictate they want that load to come in as that. So they don't have to buy the good SERP and the average SERP and the bad SERP with it. They can order that load for a Monday morning, package it that week, ship it out, and do the same thing next week. Their investment risk is lower. They get the grades they want. There's a lot of advantages to that. So it makes it real competitive in the marketplace selling, any amount of bulk SERP. So if you got questions on it, I haven't been watching here. You got any coming in yet? No, we got the question in the room here. Well, the question was, how's the container situation with retail SERP being sold? Container situation is not pretty. When, like glass, there's a lot of factors in that affects that. One, a lot more containers are being sold because it's being sold through a retail outlet, stores, farmers markets, a retail outlet. That affects it. There's a lot of different food products that use the same glass, so you're competing there. And like the glass companies, if they have a COVID outbreak, they have to shut the plants down, clean the plant, and then start back up, and they lose a week of production. So it really is hard on trying to keep containers, glass in stock. We buy from a couple plants in the US, and they all have the same story. They can sell more than they can get. We have loads coming in quite often, But when you need containers and you have a chance to buy them, get them while you can, because next week you wait to get another load. So if you know what you need for containers and they're available, you should buy them then. Same with covers. The other side of that is the closures for the top. Is the covers are the same issue. We stock pallets and pallets of covers, and we put in a PO form, and it may be 8 months to 12 months to get your next load of covers. Well, how do you figure out how many covers to have for that long? So we all trade covers back and forth. I steal some of Steve gets some for me. We try to jockey him enough to keep everybody going. But that's the other side. You've got to have a cap for the glass. So otherwise you got to run around with your finger over it. So, that's a big part of it. On the plastic jug side of it, if you order jugs with no labels, the lead time isn't too bad. You're talking 6 to 8 weeks. If you ordered screen printed or jugs, we're talking 40 weeks. We've put in for trailer loads of, say, Sugar Hill jugs, the POs come back 40 weeks out. So it's a struggle, because when you put your orders in, you don't have anything else, and they'll send you 3 trucks. Well, then where do you put them? Because when they run them, they run all of them. So we fight with that. Couchant Jugs, which is another jug manufacturer in the syrup world, burned down here 2 weeks ago. So, but they're not telling anybody how bad the fire was. They're just saying, we're offline, we'll let you know. So I don't know if it was a little fire, the whole place burned. I have no idea how big the fire was. But we had a trailer load sitting on the dock, and our truck was in the yard waiting to load Monday morning, and it burned on a Sunday night. So they just told the truck go away. So that's going to add another dynamic to the whole container situation on that end of it. There's smaller guys making jugs. CDL's making their own jugs, but their capacity isn't that large compared to Sugar Hill or Couchant jugs. But they're making jugs. I think Bacon's still around making jugs. There's a few guys using that. So there's other options, out there, but it's going to make the whole container market really tight. Same with barrels. Barrels for syrup. The metal they use to make barrels is the same metal they use for the automotive industry. And I guess vehicles are selling fairly well. So they're taking the steel. So the barrel plants are fighting to get more steel all the time. So, you can see the lead times starting to stretch from the barrel plants. So anytime you got a chance to get your supplies, that's the time to get them. Don't wait to the day before you need them. Say, I'm just going to go get 30 cases of quartz, because they may not be there. Okay. Are Canadians buying packing operations in the U.S. in order to sell their syrup? There is Canadian companies that own packers in the U.S. Highland's owned by what used to be LB, which is now Rogers Sugar, and then there's a subsidiary that owns that. So, and they bought up a few plants. They bought LB in Canada. They bought Great Northern, and they bought up a few. They probably control 30 to 40% of the market. And they've done that for a few reasons. Rogers Sugar was in the white sugar business, beet sugar, cane sugar. And in Canada here, and not too near of a future, there's going to be warning labels on stuff like on cigarette packs that white sugar is bad for you. You ain't supposed to eat it. So they're looking for an alternative, which they're hoping is maple sugar. In there, it's a healthy, organic alternative. So they're hedging some of their money by buying up these plants that, if it comes to that, their backup plan is granulated maple sugar. So, you're starting to see more of that stuff. Like Turkey Hill, who was real big into specialty containers, and they sold them like in gift shops in the airports. Well, when this all started here, whatever, 9 months ago, their sales have died. They're actually packaging grocery store stuff for LB Maple. So those guys up there are working together too, because LB couldn't keep up packaging for the grocery chain, and Turkey Hill didn't have nothing to do, which is a different company, but they're now packing for each other. So there's a lot of cooperation within the maple world, helping each other out, and that, which I think is a good thing. Our industry isn't that big compared to a lot of them. So I hope that kind of answered your question a little bit. The question or statement was if Canada is trying to flood our market to reduce the syrup up there. 90% of the syrup made in the world is made in Canada. That's up there. It's like dairy in Wisconsin. But there is a quota system, and they're controlled how much they can produce. But a lot of that syrup, probably 80% of that, comes into the U.S. It's just, it goes to packers, or it's pre-packed coming in, but the market is the U.S. for them. There's just more people there. Okay. What is the lead time on stainless barrels versus steel? Stainless barrels are pretty available, unless you want your name etched on them. That'll add maybe a week of lead time. They're not real hard to get. Steel barrels that are food grade lined, a food grade steel barrel. We get a load every couple weeks. But it's irregular. They might say it's coming Friday, but it comes Wednesday. But they're not hard to get yet. But if they're there when you need them, take them, because you never know what's going to change. If the plant gets shut down for COVID, it takes a week to get back up clean and running. Well, that adds time in there all the time. And trucking is another big issue. Is there's so much freight moving that to get a truck under a load is always a battle, because there's always another industry or load that'll pay a little more. So the drivers are always jockeying which load pays the most. And a load of steel drums isn't the nicest load to haul always. So, you gotta figure trucking out. There's a lot of freight moving in the country. Everybody I talk to is busy. No, Dave.
Caps about 0.5% are leaking. So you really got to look at the inside the cap before you put it on, especially if you're hand capping.
Yeah.
You got the forward cap,
Dave here was saying that the last couple batches of glass and covers that he got in, he was having some issues with the closures on top, that you have to really look at them, make sure they're, the seal's good and everything's good on them, because otherwise you're going to have leaking glass. And that may be from the demand as they're pushing it out the door, and that, and somebody's not looking at something exactly right. So you'll want to check your covers, check your glass, and make sure everything's, the way it should be, because that'll cause you a problem as far as mold or leakage or, or cracked glass. For a while there was some suspect glass coming in from other parts of the country, but that's been pretty much weeded out. The glass that's left is pretty good quality again. But every time somebody tries to make a new mold and make glass cheaper, there's a reason it's cheaper. It's you want to look at your glass, check your covers, that type of stuff. And there's so many different kind of closures. We used to have the old metal ones with a plasticil on the inside. We've got flip top covers now. You got covers with safety seals in them. 25 years ago, we used to put the metal cover on and put a tamper evident band of cello seals on the top. We used to come in a jar, used to fish them out and slide them down there, and the heat would close them. So I'm kind of dating myself a little bit. We figured out at dinner last night that Dawn and I are the old ones here now. and hat. So I don't think I'm old. I walk by the mirror in the morning, but I guess I'm older now. So any more questions on there, just go ahead and put them up. And then I don't know how we doing for time. What do we got? I'm done. I'm done if I want to be slow. I'm out. I'm not that pretty to look at. So one more thing. All right.
How are we doing on our transportation?
Far as well, the question is how we're doing on the road ban for transporting sap. Well, Teresa and I've been working on that. Teresa's probably been involved a little more than I have. We've been to Madison. We sat in front of I don't know, his house or assembly or whatever it was called. We pleaded our case. The towns association is fighting it tooth and nail. They don't want to see us have that. We're not asking for that much. We're asking for the same rights as a milk truck. And if we can tie ourselves to that, the dairy industry has way more power than the maple industry. So if we can get the same rights as a milk truck, it's 80% of your licensed weight is what the dairy industry has. So if you have an 80,000 pound quad axle truck, you can haul whatever it is, 68,000 or whatever the number is. I don't remember right off the top of my head. And nobody wants to even talk about that. They're there with their people and they fight that tooth and nail. They did pass it the last time to have another hearing on it to go to the next step. But it's with the COVID now, it's drug out. Change of administration drags it out. But we've been on that for a couple of years.
It should be going back in with the legislative hearing coming up. Chase Sortwell is representative. He's going to get that in.
Teresa was saying that it's going to go back into the hearing here coming up this session. Whenever this session starts, it's going to go back for a hearing process. But the best thing everybody can do is go to their local representative and talk in his ear about it. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for the same rates as a milk truck going up down the road. And I grew up on a dairy farm. There's dairy farms all around me. I know how the milk trucks operate. They're supposed to be at 80% of their licensed weight. Well, they're not going to leave part of that milk at that farm. That's not economically good for the trucks. But that's all we want is to have the same use of the roads. We pay the same taxes and the same everything. But the towns association says, well, you're the worst time of the year, which it is. It's the worst time of the year to be on the roads with the heavy trucks, but that's when the sap runs. And, if we could do it in the middle of July, I'd be all for that. I don't like running around in the woods in the snow either, but it's when it happens, it happens. So we're still fighting it. We still go to the hearings. We still try to do the stuff, but the more backing we can get at the state level, the better off we are. It'll make our jobs easier. So we go down and, tell them it's a perishable product. It's this, it's that. They don't accept the permits to give us because it's a divisible load. You can haul smaller loads. Instead of taking one big load out, they want you to take 25 with your pickup. Wow, that don't help anybody's situation, So there's a lot of discussion on it yet.
There's one more question.
Well,
Asking about the cheap syrup at places like Costco and all that effect.
Well, yeah, there's somebody always out there trying to do it cheaper. I see syrup at Sam's Club for $10, $10.50. This one says $12.50 at Costco. I see it at Menards for $9.50 a quart. Well, it's hard to push the bulk price up when it's $9.50 a quart in the store. It gets to be a point where I could go buy it in the store, dump it out, and resell it, and still make money. So that doesn't help our situation at all, by selling a quart of syrup for $9.50 in the store. That definitely doesn't help it. But there's not a lot of guys doing that. Costco, Sam's, Walmart, they beat down their vendors as far as they can. Menards do that also. So you'll see a lot of cheaper syrup out there in the world, but it's